Welcome to the first inaugural animation panel. We'd like to thank UGG, our presenting sponsor, and also the Board of Directors of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. Thanks to all of them. I'm crazy about animation, and one of the amazing things about animation is that its only boundary is the range of the filmmaker's inventiveness. So today we will have 5 Oscar-nominated films, and their imagination is boundless. Please welcome Mike Miranda, co-writer, director, The Mitchells versus the Machines. Don Hall, co-director, Raya and the Last Dragon. Charlotte de la Gournerie, producer, Flea. Charisse Castro-Smith, co-writer, co-director, Encanto. And Enrico Casarosa, co-writer, director, Luca. Welcome, everybody. So amazing to actually be in person and to have you all together. It feels surreal. What I want to do, gang, is that I want to talk individually to each of them for a few minutes, and then afterwards we'll open it up to discussion amongst the 5. So I'm going to start with Mike and Mitchell versus the Machines. Mitchell's versus the Machine follows the dysfunctional Mitchell family that winds up having to save Earth from global robot uprising while on a road trip. Let's take a look at Mitchell versus the Machines. Actually, Mike, I'm really glad we showed that clip because the film is action-packed and extremely funny, but what's amazing about the film is that it's grounded in reality, and we really care about this family. Can you tell us about that aspect of managing?
Oh yeah, no, that was like absolutely the most important thing about the movie, because if it's a movie about a robot uprising, no one cares. But if it's a movie about a family who's trying to see each other and trying to work together and sort of trying to have, trying to get to a better place, then I think everyone can relate. I think everyone has relationships with their parents or kids or whatever that you wish were better, and that you're like, they don't see where I'm coming from, and that sort of thing. And it was in those like nuances that I think the movie, if the movie succeeded, it's because of that. And we spent a lot of time sort of making sure that the family was as grounded and realistic as possible, and that was sort of like the whole mission statement behind the movie was, how do you make the movie unique but relatable? How do you make it sort of about specific people? Because sometimes, I think it's easy to have, stock characters or, like, oh, this is just, a dad. And it's like, no, what kind of dad? And it's like it's like, and the mom is, the dad is based on my actual dad. He looks exactly like that. And he's like, Mike, the guys at the Elks Club are giving me a hard time. Why does that have to look exactly like me? And my mom is like, she is very sweet. But if you try to put her kid in like not the right 3rd grade class, she will come at you like a freight train. She's like, no, my son will be in Mr. Frederick's class, not Mrs. Hollyfield's class, and if you step to me, I will break you. So that's sort of where Linda comes from in the movie, who is a very sweet, loving person, but will turn on a dime to instant rage. So we wanted to sort of make those characters feel really real and really specific, and sort of that's what we did with the whole movie, where we were like, can we make the family as unique as possible? Can we make the art style as unique as possible? Can we make the sort of, can we have new kinds of protagonists and that sort of thing. Like, we wanted to try to, in every line, and the team did an amazing job on that too, where it's like they never settled for something that you'd seen before. They were always coming up with new, weird ways of doing things, and it was so invigorating because it's a movie about a first-time filmmaker.
Speaking of seeing things we've never seen before, the fact that Katie, she is unambiguously LGBT, and then, but it's not an issue, and like the main conflict with his dad is not about her sexuality. We had a lot of LGBTQ plus team members who were really awesome and were like cheerleading us and sort of, here's what would mean something to me. Because I remember one of the, and it's, it might seem like not a big deal, but it was weirdly hard to do, in a studio animated movie. And I think one of our team members was like, if I saw that growing up, maybe I would have felt less alone. And I was like knocked me back because I was like, oh my God, how could we not do it? If that can make somebody feel like that. And it's like, Flea also has this like incredible story, that's sort of like, and I think in animation, we were talking about it before the panel, but it's like, I think it's easy to project yourself on animation because, if you're looking at Tom Hanks, you're like, that's Tom Hanks, I'm not Tom Hanks. But if you're looking at a cartoon character, you're like, that's me. And because, kids can sort of, and adults and whoever can sort of put themselves in these places, I think it's really important to be as representative as possible. The film has two animation styles. You have this very realistic style, and then you combine, which is very organic, and then with the robots, the style changes. Can you talk about creating those two worlds?
Yeah, I mean, that was another thing where it's like the team came in so huge because because it's a movie about humanity, and something that I think anyone, on this panel can attest to is that sometimes the computer wants to kill your humanity. They're like, what if we shave this off, and what if we, So for the artists who made it, we wanted to sort of, instead of hiding our humanity, we wanted to reveal it, and we wanted to make it seem like a person drew every frame and lit every frame, and we had the benefit of the team from Spider-Verse was our team on this movie, and it was like the 95 Bulls rolling up, like, what's up, dude? What do you need? And I'm like, really? You'll do it? And they like wrote software to make, the light look like it was watercolor, and they did all these amazing things. And then we graffitied all over it. We took this like multi-million-dollar movie and then just like drew on it like teenagers. And that was really exciting too, because the movie is about, a first-time filmmaker sort of, and it's like about invention and being excited about art for the first time. And she's so exploding with ideas that we wanted the movie to be exploding with ideas. So it felt like the movie was an extension of her. Interestingly, the more we drew on the screen, the more characters, the more the audience liked Katie, because they're like, oh, it's like she made the movie. This is cool. So that was sort of the thinking behind it. And I'm really, the movie looks way better than I ever thought it would.
I think you've addressed it, but how did you guys come up with the Katie vision, with the two, the action footage and live action mixed in, et cetera?
I mean, that was the same thing where we have a production designer, Lindsay Oliveras, who is like the best in the world. I love her. And she was just somebody whose art we liked on Instagram. And we're like, can we make the movie look like this? And then so instead of hiring someone to mimic her style, we just hired her. And it was really great because she actually took the foot, because we had this idea to have Katie Vision where it was sort of like the main character was like almost editing the movie herself. And again, because she's a first-time filmmaker, and this is a film, we wanted to make it feel like her film. But our production designer just took some footage from the movie home for the weekend and drew in like it was like Macromedia Flash or something. It was like the worst program you could possibly use. And she sort of just drew on the frame. And it was so exciting to see like, again, in everything we're doing, we're trying to see more of a hand of the human. and so there's nothing more immediate or human than a 17-year-old girl's drawings.
Speaking of technology, in the film, you don't. I thought it was going to become like a story about technology is bad.
Yeah.
Instead, you balance the two. That ultimately balance is what is necessary with technology.
Yeah, no, and that was really important to us because, for example, I learned about animation online. I would bug these cartoonists like Aaron Springer, will you be my friend on, whatever, and then he answered my questions, and I was like, well, if that guy can be a cartoonist, maybe I can. So basically, because we had this experience of how positive the internet could be, it seemed crazy to say it's all bad because we made the movie on a computer. And so you have to, the sort of technology is sort of part of your family now. It's at your dinner table. It's there before you go to, right before you go to bed at night, and there when you wake up in the morning. And it's only a tool, and if you develop a healthy relationship with it and you use it to connect with other people, it can be amazing. Mm-hmm. But it could also lead to a horrible robot apocalypse. Guys, Elon Musk is up to some bad stuff. All right? We got to stop him.
I'm obsessed with Katie. I've seen the film a few times, and every time I watch it, I catch little Easter eggs about, the shining pattern socks.
Yeah.
The fact that she is a Lynn Ramsey fan and Greta Gerwig. Tell us about all those little bits of information about her being a cinephile.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, that's the easiest stuff in the world, just because we love Lin Ramsey, and it wasn't a challenge to be like, what if there was a movie nerd? It's like we're all a bunch of dorks, and we're like, oh, do you know what would be awesome if we did like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but Katie made it, and it's called Portrait of an Idiot on Fire, and we got really excited about that stuff because we are her, and I think that's sort of when the movie is at its most successful. I think it's when it's sort of reflecting life. And that is what we knew more than anything is how to make a film nerd, because that's sort of who looks at us in the mirror every morning.
Wow. Thank you. I love the film, and thank you for being here, Mike.
Thank you so much. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So, gang, next, Raya and the Last Dragon. It takes place in a realm known as Kumandra, a reimagined Earth inhabited by an ancient civilization where a warrior named Raya is determined to find the last dragon in order to unify the divided world. Let's take a look at Raya and the Last Dragon. Awesome. So, Don, the movie is highly, highly entertaining, but I love the fact that there is these themes that are brewing underneath about, I spoke about the unification, the very divided, country, and also the theme of trust and mistrust, that her journey is all about learning to trust. Can you talk about those themes?
Yeah, we had been working on the film for a while, and the idea of a broken land coming back together had always been sort of the core idea. And it seemed to lack specificity. And so when we hit upon the theme of trust, it allowed us to, suddenly everything connected in the movie. And it was a little weird in that it did feel like life was imitating art, during the making of the film, and it felt like such an important message to get out in the world, and it allowed us to be able to explore it from different angles. Every character has sort of a take on this idea of trust. Mm-hmm. And we were making the movie during the pandemic. So most of it was made at home, at least in terms of the production of it, and also during a time of, quite frankly, great social unrest. And we were very aware of the overlap between real life and art as we were making it. But to us, it just felt like it was an important theme and an important message, to get out in the world. And if we could pull it off, maybe, we could help the conversation. I'll put it that way.
I'm going to Mike Miranda on you. The film geek in me was super jazzed about the fact that the theme of trust and mistrust carries to the cinematography, where there are scenes that deal with trust, and then you shoot it in wide lenses. Was I imagining that? And then in the scenes of mistrust, then it becomes longer lenses. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we have to give the credit for that to our cinematography team, Rob Dressel, and because they mapped out the entire film with that in mind, taking the thematic of trust and looked at every scene and how are we going to shoot it, and because I'm such a cartoon dude. Like, I don't know lenses or anything like that, but luckily we have this amazing team that does, and so that is how they broke the film down, and in terms of each scene in trust and choosing which lenses to shoot it with.
So there's 5 lands in Kumandra.
Yep.
I watch it and I'm blown away about how distinct each land looks. Was that a challenge for you guys?
Yes, it was a huge challenge, as you can imagine, because with most films, it's like you're doing the production design for the film, and it generally takes place in a singular world, and so it's a unified kind of vision for the production design. With this one, we had to do five distinct ones, and it's such a testament to our production design team, Paul Felix, Helen Chen, and also our Southeast Asian Story Trust, who we leaned on heavily with every single thing. You can imagine in the film was a collaboration between our art team and our Southeast Asian Story Trust to make sure we got it right.
The film is a total sensory immersion into Southeast Asia cultures. Although it's a fantasy line, but it's grounded in Southeast Asia traditions. Can you talk about that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of the core of it. We had sent several teams on research trips all around Southeast Asia to
How do we sign up to go on this research?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, pretty good deal. And so the purpose of those trips are, they're incredibly valuable to our films, and we do it with every film. And the research trips are where you have, you're getting visual stimulus from whatever you're seeing, and people are sketching and taking pictures and photos and videos. There's that data that gets brought back, but you're also meeting people, and a lot of times the people you meet then become what we call these story trusts, and they help you make the movie. And so it's a collaboration with several different people, and I can't stress how we couldn't have done this movie without that. That really close collaboration with our Southeast Asian Story Trust, because they consulted on everything from fabric to character designs to the weapons, everything. Every single thing was a collaboration with this Story Trust.
Throughout the film, there are all these gorgeous motifs. You use water as a motif, and then also food becomes a metaphor for trust.
Yeah.
Can you talk about incorporating that?
Yeah, I mean, the water, that was always sort of a fundamental element, and the idea of the river, shaped like the dragon, and all the lands being, part of the dragon. That was always a core idea, and it's, it was essentially based or inspired by the Mekong River. And water is so integral to so many different cultures in Southeast Asia. It's sacred. And in fact, Sisu, our dragon, is based on a naga, which is a mythical creature in many different cultures in Southeast Asia, and have a strong connection to water, a very strong, a deep spiritual connection to water. And we wanted to make sure we honored that. And then the food thing was also part of our research trips, where people, just noticed that everywhere they went, food was so important. And we thought, God, that's such a great way to be able to not only have people in the different, regions notice different foods, but also notice the idea of community being galvanized or brought together by food. And so it became a very important marker for us to kind of track trust through the movie.
Mm-hmm. And then also the way they greet one another. Can you tell us about how they come about?
Yeah, again, we were looking for something that is unique to our world, because Kumandra obviously is a fantasy world, and and there's having gone to the regions, people brought back the idea of the hands together and the slight bow as a greeting that is sort of in real life, and we wanted to do something that is similar, and we thought, because the dragon gem is such a sacred object in the film, if our hand gesture could be essentially making the shape of the dragon gem, and based on whom you're greeting, so for instance, if it was Sisu, it's the highest, because that is she's a spiritual being, and then the lower it got, the more it was about how, based on age and respect, essentially.
What I love about it is that it foretells the solution to her problem is that unity and working together.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful gesture. Last question, Don. The film has this incredible epic scale, and as I mentioned, action-packed, but there's a deep character development in it. Was that challenging for you guys to balance the two scopes?
Well, yeah, I guess it's always sort of a challenge, but like Mike said, it's critical to our films, right? Because I think that's why people love animated films, and that's why I love animated films as well, is that you can achieve kind of this epic, mythic scale, but if you do it right, you bring it down to a human level with characters that everybody can relate to. And so, was it challenging? Yeah, and also just when you have a cast, of a few different characters, finding moments for everybody, that's always a little tricky, as you're putting the film together, because you have to honor your core story and your main relationships, but, Baby Noi and those Ongis got to do some stuff. We want to see them, do some fun stuff. So that's always a challenge, is just how can you, honor everything but keep it all connected in the same thing.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you
for being here.
Thank you.
Next is Flea. Flea is nominated for Best Animated Feature. It's also nominated for Best Documentary, and is nominated for Best International Feature. It's the first time in history that a film has achieved this feat. Flea is an animated documentary from Denmark about Amin, a successful academic who's on the verge of marriage to his longtime boyfriend, and is confronted with a secret from his past. Let's take a look at Flea. When did Jonas, the director, when he came over to you and he said, I'm gonna create an animated film about the subject, what was your reaction?
I felt very privileged, because when you work in animation, you don't really often have the opportunity to make an animation for an adult audience. It's often for kids, and having someone coming with such a strong story, and I wanted to use the medium of animation, I was like, that's amazing. We can show what animation can achieve in terms of storytelling. And I think because animation can bring some poesy and like a kind of a perspective that I think live action can't bring, or it brings in a different way. So I think it's really, I was very excited to be able to put a team around him, animation director, art director, to really find a visual language for his story. So, yeah.
Yeah, what's remarkable about the film is that how you guys are twisting the format of the film to fit the story being told. When you were doing the film, were you aware of that? Of that?
I think what really has been very special in the way we've been making the film is the way we edited it and how we storyboarded it. We did the storyboard and the animatic for about a bit more than a year, and we have like regular or like an amazing storyboard artist that has been working together with the live action editor called Janus. Is a grand editor in Denmark. He's been editing Another Round from Winterberg, or The Hunt as well, and so it's the first time for him that he's been doing an animated film. So normally when you do a live action or documentary, the animation, the editing comes at the very end. When here in animation we can't afford to throw out animation, it's too expensive. So we need to work on a lock animatic, and if the animatic works, then your movie is going to work. It's the story there, because you can't fix a story in animation. So I think what was amazing is that you have the editor was sitting next to the storyboard artist and asked, could I have an angle from Amin, or can I have like a top view from Kabul in a live action? You will say that's too expensive, I can't, But so it was an amazing collaboration with the editor and the storyboard artist, understanding, okay, that's how they work in live action. That's how we work in animation. And I think I have people coming from those two different backgrounds to serve a story, and like how can we bring the best tool of storytelling coming from both worlds. And I think that's because of that. Then the storyboard artist, so the lead storyboard artist is also an animation director, Kenneth Lelkier. So he knew like visually how will that translate into animation after. So I think they could really exchange on like the different layers and how things are intertwined and how you go back and forth. And so I think it's having people that know their craft within their field and really talk together to like, okay, that's how I will do. What do you think? And together with the director, of course, and the art director that was also there to make sure that the consistency was there throughout the movie, to not lose the audience, because it's quite a challenging movie, like in terms of timeline, style, location. So we need to have the audience to stay with us throughout the full movie. And
yeah, you guys created two different styles of animation. There's the 2D color animation, and then as we saw in the clip, there is this abstract style which mirrors his state of mind. Can you talk about when did you guys decided to do two different animation styles, and how challenging was it to manage those two different styles and combining them as well?
So Jonas, the director, always had that in mind. So the voices you hear, the real voices of Amin, the main characters, and the director, because it's based on an interview. And because Amin, the way they did the interview, Amin was laying down and he's talking in present time to remember his past. But there's some event in his past that are so traumatic that I think his memory is not completely, like, can't recall everything. So you could hear in the voice that the voice gets, that Amin is having a hard time recollecting his memory. So Jonas wanted to show visually how those traumatic moments it's a bit different. So I think it's really, we use those graphical, this animation is more graphical and quite organic. Like we did some tests and like with chalk, like on paper when we worked on concept art. It was really to picture that, to like there is more. It's a bit like mixed memories, and we wanted to picture that visually. And so we work with an animation director called Simon Ruby, who directed Adama. It's a European feature film that create this concept art just for that part. But then it's a fine balance, because you can't make a full movie like that. The audience will be like, what kind of film is that? Like it's quite hard to watch. So we had to like not to be too much, but not too little. So it's like, how do you balance the 2D classic animation with the graphical? So, and that's in editing. Yeah.
You also insert footage, live reels throughout the film. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's the archive footage. I think it's very important for the director for Jonas that people, when you watch the movie, realize and remember that it is a real story about. So I think it's just really to make sure that to ground that in like a real world per se. And also to make sure that, because we go in different locations, so it's also to like, how does it look in Kabul in the 80s, and then in Moscow and like in Europe. So I think it's also to both for the storytelling to make sure the audience can follow like where we are and how it looked back then, but also to make the audience aware that it is a real story.
Yeah. I want to clarify, and I want to hear your clarification that Amin is a pseudonym. That's not his real name. But the voice we hear is the real person.
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, exactly. So Amin, he has this. So Jonas, the director, is a radio filmmaker. It's his first animated film. That's where like the team, the animation team we put around him, the animation director Kenneth and the art director Jess Nichols, were his right and left hand through the full project. Because when we work with people that haven't done animation, it's a completely different language and timing like this. It's but to come back to your question, Amin wasn't ready to tell his story, and Jonas tried because he's been a documentary filmmaker for a few years, and he asked his friend, like, I would like to tell you a story, but Amin wasn't ready. But the day where Jonas said, what about if I do it animation? Will you be okay with that? And he said, yeah, okay, if it's animation, yes, because then it protects him. It's protecting his identity, his family, like so. So the animation at the beginning was really for that, to really protect the protagonist, and then to bring memory to life to memory.
All 5 films are Oscar nominated, but you and your team got 3 nominations for the same film in 3 different categories. First time in history, as I mentioned. How did you guys feel about that?
I feel very privileged, and I'm very thankful for people that voted for being Fellini in those categories, because animation is not it's a tool to tell a story, and I think it's the fact that it's recognized by the documentary crowd and by the animation crowd and by film in general. It means that animation can cross borders, and as an animation director, I'm very pleased that and I'm also very pleased that it means that the movie is going to be seen, because it's a niche film, it's an arts movie, it's not very mainstream. So the fact that we have those nominations, it means that the story is going to be seen by more people. And Amin was saying that he's very happy for how the movie is being received by people, because when he grew up, like, there was no story about refugee. He couldn't relate. So it's really like what you said earlier. It's really we need to tell a story for people to feel that there's other story like theirs, and it's okay. They are part of the world, and we need to tell those stories. So that's what the 3 nomination brings. So I'm very happy that is happening, and it's unbelievable, really.
Well deserved. Now we're moving on to Colombia and Encanto. And Encanto tells a story of Mirabel Madrigal, who was born into a magical family in Colombia, where everyone has a special gift except her. Let's take a look at Encanto. Cherise, I think I mentioned to you I'm from Panama, which is adjacent to Colombia. My mom saw this film, and she called me crying because she said that, within our family ourselves, I'm lighter skinned, my sister's darker skin, and she was saying, for the first time, I'm seeing my family on the screen represented. Can you tell us about the importance of the representation on screen?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I had a similar experience. I'm Cuban American, and my grandfather was much darker than me. My cousins look very different than I do, and we're all part of the same family. And like you said, it's not a type of family that we see on screen that often, but that I think is meaningful for a lot of people to be able to see themselves reflected in that way. And this movie is based on Colombia, and it is an incredibly diverse place. It's a place where families look like the family Madrigal, so it made sense to make the family representative of that place and the people who live there.
One of the many aspects I love about this film is that the internal conflict, there's no antagonist. It's like this internal struggle within the family about seeing each other and communicating. Can you, as the co-writer, can you tell us about that narrative?
Sure. For a while, there was a few screenings where we had an antagonist. It was this other family that lived in town, and they were just always picking on the Madrigals, and it ended up not making sense. It was just felt silly because this movie is about family, and it's about the wonderful, life-giving aspects of family, and also about the really challenging, difficult aspects of family. And every time we'd screen the movie, people would say, we just want more of them, we want to see more of them. And so we just decided to dig into actually what can be difficult realistically about family. And for the Madrigals, and I think for a lot of families across the world, for them, it's intergenerational trauma and the way that spills down through multiple generations and is affecting this family over a great deal of time. So, it was so interesting creating that character of Abuela Alma because, so many people who've talked to me after seeing the film have said like that was really representative of their grandmother, that it really felt like them, loving and also really difficult, and and so I think she's kind of the backbone of the movie in a lot of ways. Obviously Mirabel she's our protagonist, but Abuela Alma is the one who has sacrificed everything to give this family a new life, and the one who needs to change and kind of open her eyes and see things differently.
When did you guys arrive at the idea of gifts? Because when we watch the film, we all grow up in a family, and we're assigned family roles. My brother's a smart one. I'm the goofy one, etc. But you make it gifts. When did you guys arrive at that notion?
So that was an idea that was a part of the movie from very early on. We knew that each character was going to be based on some kind of very relatable family archetype, like you were saying. I think probably my brother would say that I was like the Isabella of my family. I was like the oldest girl who could sort of do no wrong. Everybody, I think, falls into these family roles, as you were saying, right? And so because this movie is based on magical realism and really takes inspiration from that tradition, which for our film, we define that to ourselves as kind of like emotion made manifest into magic, or relationship made manifest into magic. For the family roles, why shouldn't the strong one who carries everything in the family be able to lift 10 donkeys? So that was kind of the thinking, that like to start with who these people are and what their roles are within the family, and then just make them magical and visually amazing and cool.
In the opening number, you introduce 12 characters. Is that a record for a Disney film? And how challenging was it to create 12, it's 12, right? About 12 individual characters.
So I don't know if we hold a record. I assume that we might. I don't know. But I give a ton of credit to our incredible songwriter, Lin-Manuel Miranda, because it was actually his idea to create this song where we just kind of just jump right into it and meet everyone and kind of go on this journey. It was really inspired by the village song from Beauty and the Beast. And we were like, okay, I don't know that we're gonna get it all in like a song, but he did. He proved it to us. And I love that song because it just sort of throws us into the world and makes us fall in love with all of those characters. And somehow we understand who they are and how they all fit together, which is an amazing testament to Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Mm-hmm. In regard to the songs, they're staged very presentational, like if you're watching a live performance, like a theater. Can you tell us about that approach?
Sure. So I think, I have a theater background. I was a playwright before I got into theater and before I got into television and features. And, the other two directors that I work with, Byron Howard and Jared Bush, they're total theater nerds also. So like this kind of like traditional musical theater thing is something that we all love and really embrace, obviously Lin-Manuel as well. Yeah, we wanted the musical numbers to feel joyous and exuberant. We had an amazing choreographer who we worked with named Jamal Sims and his dance captain, Kai Martinez.
Which, by the way, before I forget, the choreography is the first time that choreography is instrumental in the storytelling, correct? That you guys involved the choreographer to help you with the story?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, I think the best example of that is the song We Don't Talk About Bruno, which some of you may have heard of. For that one, you know, we had amazing storyboards by one of our awesome heads of story, Nancy Cruz, and we just gave those storyboards to the choreographer, Jamal Sims, and he and his team just there's videos online of it. It's incredible. Just made an entire production number out of it, and then the animators worked very closely with Jamal to kind of make sure every movement was stylistically right, because there's a difference between like Cuban salsa dancing and Colombian salsa dancing. So we wanted to really nail those differences, and it was a deep collaboration between Jamal and Kai and all of our animators, one in particular, Michael Woodside, who really worked hard to get all of those details right.
Now, were you guys caught off guard by the Encanto mania?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's still very strange to me because I have the perspective of knowing what a personal film this actually was for so many of the people who worked on it, you know, not just, you know, me and Byron and Jared and our producers, but the entire crew really drew from their families, drew from their personal lives as they were animating it, as they were designing it. There was so much passion that went into this film. So in a way, it did feel like it was a very personal movie. And then, you know, to have it kind of explode in the way that it did, I think we're all really just blown away, quite frankly.
Well, thank you so much, Cherise. And now, finally, Enrico, who patiently waited for this moment. Luca. Luca is it's a coming-of-age story set in a beautiful seaside town of Porto Rosso on the Italian Riviera. Luca is a young boy experiencing an unforgettable summer, but with one deep secret. He's a sea monster. Here's a clip from Luca. Right off the bat, Enrico, I want you to tell me about the color saturation. I don't remember seeing an animated film with such saturated colors.
Yeah, we certainly punched them up. We wanted, of course, to capture the place and the beautiful waters of the Ligurian Sea, and also we wanted to feel this boy's world opening up. So we're already starting on beautiful aqua greens underwater. So we kept on saying, well, there needs to be more once he's outside. Of course, you know, with this expressionistic, also painterly thing we were also after, which is funny, was we're all chasing away from the computers, you know, chasing some warmth. The funny thing that I remember about this is that when we started talking about Luca's imagination, I asked, like, but we have to go more saturated. And they're like, we're almost out of color here, Enrico, watch out. Because, you know, of course, we are already an expressionistic style in Porto Rosso. We needed to punch it up even further into the dreams. And that, you know, luckily it's not only color, it's texture, it's painterly, it's, you know, also the flair of artists.
I'm going to Mike Miranda on you. And I was blown away by the fact that even on the shadows, we see the texture and we see color on the edges of the shadow. You know, can you tell us about?
Yeah, there's we did probably torture some lighting artists. There's something there's one artist specifically, Tadahiro Uesugi, who some of you might know, amazing illustrator from Japan, and he always does these amazing shadow edges, and you know this happens really optically at the edge of a shadow. There's a little bit of a contrasting color, so it'll you know, from a purple go more to an orange. So we tried to do that, which was not easy with our tools, to be honest. So we looked for ways to do it, and that on top of that, of course, we have all these beautiful sets that we did so much shading that was handmade on the cobblestone, and so it's this wonderful mix of the inspiration of the place, of the Cinque Terre from Italy, but also through the lens of a lyrical lens and an artistic lens. So yeah, it was a lot about immerse ourselves in those details was so important. So we looked for kind of a lyrical expression that was a little bit summed up, but also very, very, punched up as well.
You tell the story through the point of view of Luca, and the cinematography carries that we see everything through his vantage point. And then what I love about the film is that everything is wide at the beginning, but then as he starts getting to know his friends and learning about himself, we start getting closer and closer visually with the cinematography. Can you talk about that visual journey?
Yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity to really, first of all, yes, be in that world. So we joked around, but Yasuro Ozu, the camera in many ways, Ozu always had this low camera in his movies. And it was really about taking us in this small world of kids, being a kid again. And then, yes, because of the character journey, we had this opportunity, of course, to keep on widening this world. We did it in camera, but we did it also with focus underwater. There's not a whole lot of, you can't see very far. There's a hit, we wanted it to be beautiful, but also hint at the fact that you wanted more. So once we're outside the water, everything gets sharp. We see very, very far. We hear more sound. The sound is a little more tamped down underwater. So we looked for all those tools to really allow to feel the character journey. And once you're on land, then you have even more to play with. The camera starts being more active, a little more dynamic, and it slowly leads us to feeling the turmoil of their relationship, and all the way into, of course, the most active camera. Of course, it's our crazy rainy race, which, of course, we brought on the weather. And
which doesn't have any sharp angles. It's all round, and especially in the bike race. I have to ask about the character design. I love the fact that Luca has big eyes, and it says so much about the character. And then we meet Alberto, and he has a big mouth because he's a big talker. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we definitely were after really designing with character in mind. You're absolutely right. I think Luca is a little bit of a cousin, I think, of the La Luna kid from my short, which had also shared this sense of wanting to see the world. So curiosity, right? So okay, we always try and think of how do we design that? The same way, interestingly, Massimo, who's first someone we can't read and he's dangerous, Giulia's dad, and we covered his eyes and we can't tell what's going on exactly in his mind, and of course threatening. Absolutely, you're right. Alberto was immediately like, well, he's got to have a big mouth. It's all about talking. It's all about bravado. Leaning into the cartooniness, but also at the heart of the character. Of course.
And then Julia, composition-wise, she's always inserting herself in between the two of them, and her triangular pants. Can you talk about Julia?
You're absolutely right. We thought a lot about a triangle, really, in the middle of this friendship. She's strong, so that felt right, in shape, language. Those pants were really hard to do because they don't make a whole lot of sense. They wouldn't flare out, just the ankles this thick. But they were technically a little tricky. But there was something about being blue collar, being, unapologetically herself. She's an outsider herself, right? Of course, the big theme in our movie, it's like underdogs forever. And the sense that, they of course hit it off because she's an odd little girl, and they have this huge secret, right? So of course, the themes there being really of feeling different and feeling some shame about feeling different, and how they have to kind of come together. But you're right, and in many ways we wanted to slowly get Alberto back in the middle. He's actually in quite a few scenes as his jealousy ramps up. He's the guy who just tries to separate Luca and Julia. We're getting a little closer.
And tell us, I mean, you've spoken about Miyazaki's influence, but then Fellini and Italian cinema in the 50s and the 60s permeates the entire film. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Giulietta Masina, who is Fellini's wife, I hope some of you know, the boat is the first thing you see in the movie. It's Gelsomina, it's her character in La Strada. There's something about her innocence that always inspired. I actually think a lot about Luca and the La Luna kid with her innocence and wide-eyed. There's something so wonderfully. The pantomime, it was amazing how much you could do without dialogue. But Fellini in general, of course, the sense of the dreamlike and being a way that you can get inside characters was key for us, because we wanted to show what was in Luca's mind. And so that enabled us to really think a little bit like, in the same way you did it in 8½, that you could have a few strands. So that was really, interestingly, structurally, it gave us the idea of like, oh, actually, not only we want to see it, but maybe this slowly is increasing, and because his world is getting bigger and bigger, he's seeing more. Mm-hmm. So it was so fun to bring that imagination side that feels very, I always think about the shot of the leg and the rope to the beach, one of the first shots in 8½.
And the film is set somewhat in the late 50s, 60s Italy, but then at the same time it feels timeless. Can you tell us about that approach?
Yeah, there's a paradox there. I think there's something about choosing an era that is just a tiny bit further away from us, that I think that's what we were after. We're like, well, actually, it's 1959, 60s, or whatever you want to call it, but then it enabled us to keep kind of the essence of a place. Because also these towns are so small and so in such a small place, like hanging on for dear life on the rocks. They haven't been developed. There's no space to build more. So they are stuck in time in many ways. And I think there was something about the 1950s summer that I never lived that felt all right, because it feels like, you think about Stand By Me, I feel like we all wish we had one of those summers. And the music being a key thing that I wanted to bring from Italy.
It feels like a memory. I mean, it doesn't feel like you're recreating music from the 1950s and 60s, but it feels like almost like a memory of what the music must have been like.
Yeah, there's something special about summer music, because we hear it a lot, right? Like whatever that little tune. But it was really hard to make choices, to be honest, with the music, because I had these playlists of like 60 songs that we would love to all put in there, from the era. And music, I'm glad you bring up music too, because thinking about score, there's something working with Dan Romer and getting to the emotion of our movie was one of the biggest things for me, because getting to that ending and getting this goodbye, I think that music immediately made us feel this strong ending that contained a lot of my life, because I've been that kid who has to leave. I've been the immigrant kid, and I think that's something that we can all relate to, even just leaving to go to college or leaving to go elsewhere. But that sense of both sadness of having to say goodbye to your family or to your friend, but the hope of your path. There was something I worked really hard to try and get in there, because there was a bittersweet emotion that I felt complex.
And last question is when he transforms from a sea monster into a kid, I've never seen anything like it in an animated film, where the transformation, it comes almost from within, and it's like an emotional transformation as well. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was one of those things that I had sleepless nights for because it was so technically difficult. We couldn't do it for like a good year. We kept on doing tests, and it takes a while to get the tools to make it work. Even at first, it looked like like a tiled roof that would just kind of go away or something, or a skin disease of some sort. But why it was hard, it was because we wanted it to be emotional. We wanted it to be different. We wanted it to be kind of biological. A moment, it was about wonder, and we wanted to really slow it down and see it happening and have him really appreciate it. Another moment would be like him freaking out, and we thought like, it's really the character that in some way is commanding the speed of it. And so that made it so we had to give all the controls to the animators. So it was very tricky technically to give all those controls, but that enabled them to have an actual real performance and movement that went with this actual transformation, which is slightly more technical in some ways. So they were able to kind of have the character feel like a little wave of sort that's passing through them.
Yeah, but Mike, I kind of feel that Katie would like this film because, Fellini and Miyazaki, that would be up her alley.
So wonderful. I think Katie or somebody would like any of these films because they're so varied and they're all original and they're all personal. And it's really nice. That's really nice to see, and it's a really real privilege to be nominated with these champs.
I want to ask a question to all of you. Is that you all work, but for Charlotte, with big studios, and we've heard stories about film studios restraining a filmmaker's weird or quirky impulses in the storytelling. What has been your experience, and do you feel you have been encouraged to chase your wildest impulses? And do you mind sharing specific examples?
Sure. I think it's a real risk because, it's so easy to be like these evil executives, and sometimes they're like, look, we've got an investment. You're a kid. I don't know what's going on here, but I think it's like our responsibility as filmmakers to push boundaries and break new ground and tell the story that's like burning a hole in your soul, because if you don't, that comes across. If you see a movie and you're like, I don't think anyone cared about this, and you want to make movies that are like urgent and feel like they're doing new things and breaking new ground and telling stories that only this person could tell in their own specific, unique way. And, we were really lucky at Sony because like Sony doesn't have a house style or something. So we sort of like, they just threw us the keys and we're like, whoa, this is crazy. But I think in any studio you're up against sort of tradition, and you've got to try to buck it, and because that is what's worked before, and it's scary to do new things, but I think it's really important.
Cherise, I think about what you were mentioning about the 12 characters at the beginning, and what was there pushback in the sense that no, you cannot have 12, and Lin stepped in.
There was a little bit of pushback, It was like, do you need this person? Do you need this person? We were like, yes, we do. This is a story about a family, a multi-generational extended family that's all living under one roof. And yes, we need all 12 of them. So I think it was a bit of a challenge sort of over our development screenings and over our 1,300 rewrites that we did, because Jared and I counted, to really make sure that each of those 12 characters had like a full arc and had a life and felt grounded and like a full person. But I do credit Disney Animation for sticking with us and letting us have all 12 of them. So yeah, thanks.
Don, do you have any?
Yeah, nobody ever really pulled us back. I will say, Carlos, my fellow director, and I, the one thing that we did pull back a little bit was the violence, because I remember seeing the first animation test of Raya and Namari fighting, and in live action you can shoot around things. They're not really hitting. Fists aren't hitting face. They just look like they are, and a sound effect makes it sound like they are, but they're not. With animation, because we have control of the frame, you can do that. And so the first animation test of a fight between Amari and Raya, they were like, boom, like hitting face, and you saw flesh, kind of buckling, and it was like, yeah, that might be a little too far. And so we thought maybe we'll shoot it more like a live action fight. So that wasn't the studio, that was Carlos and I feeling like, might be a little too brutal. But it'll be good for the, I don't know, DVD or something like that.
Enrico, did you get any?
On story, no. They were wonderfully supportive. We around screening 2 or 3, we realized that the movie wanted to be small, and they were supportive of that. So that we took some of the slightly bigger, world versus world things and focused on Luca and Alberto. The thing where we had to push a tiny bit, it's breaking a little bit the house look, and I think, again, that is a little bit new for Pixar, because we do have a little more of a certain look. And I certainly was there to knock on that door and wanting to, okay, this is a personal story. It's a different tone. Let's find a different look. And then, you just gotta push, and then then you find a compromise halfway there. But I think it's wonderful to see it. You'll see it in Turning Red is the same with Domi Shi, who has her own very wonderful, funny, and even more anime background. So I feel it's wonderful to see Pixar embrace personal stories with different tones and different looks.
Mm-hmm. And Charlotte, you guys were an independent film. Did you have any restrictions to?
Yeah. Budget. It's like so for a documentary, it's very expensive film, but for animation, it's a very cheap movie. So where we were, the way it works in Europe is that you get funding from your country, so public institution. And then we had to explain to the commissioners that we need that much money because that's what animation takes. We are doing 5 seconds per day, and a background take a full day to do. So we need more money, and and that's what we had to explain that. Because they were like, but why, with your budget, we could do 4 documentaries. So why, can you explain me why we should give it to you instead of other movie? Huh. And the argument, that was one that we brought up was like, I think if we're using animation, this movie is going to be more seen than if it was just live action. Because when you look at the range of, the people who are watching documentary are over 50 years old. So, but when you use animation, it's going to be a younger audience. It's going to be a grown-up audience, 16 plus, because it's not a kid film. And that's what we need this film to be seen. And using animation, we're going to reach out a broader audience. And also, you can see the animation style it's limited. So we really worked with the animation director to find a style that can serve the story. So it's really how can you be creative within a frame, within constraint, and not being producer against art directors and animation director. It's more like, okay, in order to make the animation, what do you need, and then how many frames can you remove until it looks too cheap or doesn't work for the storytelling. So it's really this conversation we're having, creative conversation and doing tests where some places where we need more drawing, more frame, but some other places it's okay to actually remove the frames. But so yeah, budget has been a big constraint. Yeah.
Following up on your point to all of you is that your films deal with serious subjects and themes and ideas, but then they're all 5 films are highly entertaining. And then also, your films land with all different ages. With younger and adults, is managing all of that, is that challenging? The keeping grounded with themes and entertainment, and also our audience is an adult audience, it's also a young audience, etc. Cherise?
Sure, I think that's a great question. So, I mean, with our film in particular, we were taking a lot of inspiration from magical realism, as I said, which is a literary tradition that is about both magic and pain, quite frankly. You sort of can't have one without the other. And so for us in particular, there was a lot of work that we did on the sequence, particularly in the song Dos Oruguitas, where you see the truth of what happened to Abuela Alma, see what she lost, this trauma that she went through. That scene took a lot of work to get it to a point where, as you said, it could be something that small children could see, but that also adults would see that and understand what that experience really was for her. So I think it took a lot of nuancing and a lot of work to kind of calibrate it so that it would kind of contain enough for both adults and for children.
Don?
Yeah, I think the way I kind of look at it is, there's sort of an audience expectation from our films, and that, that they do have everything, right? That they do have a deep level of emotion, they have humor, some sophisticated, some, that not, and it's all good. And I think the way I like to lean into it in terms of, to me, the humor kind of breaks down an audience and gets them ready. If they're laughing, they're investing, and then you got them, and then you can hit them with the emotion later because you've hooked them. So I guess that's what I love about all the films on this panel, but animation in general is that they do generally have the entirety of human experience in a film, and I actually love that we can relate to every person, young, old, all over. To me, that's the joy of animation.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think these movies are like empathy machines. My favorite movies are empathy machines, where it's like you see The Bicycle Thief or something, to speak to Desika, and you're like, oh my God, like I understand this cycle of how you can get to a place where you're stealing, and you would think like, hey, this guy stole my bike, he's an a-hole or whatever, and you're like, oh no, I understand the background. And same with families, like our goal for this movie was that a kid could watch it and be like, oh, maybe my parents aren't idiots. Maybe they're just trying to look out for me. That's so interesting. And have parents look at it and be like, maybe I'm not seeing my daughter or son or whatever. So I think it's sort of for the, for animation and stuff, it's you never want to limit your audience or say, oh, it's only for these people or this people, because it's kind of for everyone. All movies I think should be for everyone. And I think that if you can get someone to, see themselves in it and see the world in a new way, it's like, oh my, then you've won.
Enrique?
Yeah, the thought that comes to my mind, I always hope that the kids are there. You're creating this fantastical world. They're along the ride and they're feeling the emotion. And I always hope that we're pulling out that kid out of the adult that goes back to thinking a little bit the way. I think that would be a wonderful gift. And I think movies that do that, to me, I absolutely love. That I feel like a kid again. That I have a sense of wonder again. I'll bring one interesting example of this interesting balance, because we have this huge fight, and so now let's say we've been goofy, and these guys we've invested in these two kids because they're idiots, right? So that's probably the silliest kind of humor you can have, but you're investing in them. But now you're toward the end of the movie, and they are finally fighting. They're really fighting, and we had a long discussion about that fight, whether that should be just violent or not. And we really went for like this silly detail, which is just him biting him, Alberto. I think Luca bites Alberto, and it's a really goofy, weird animation. And I remember we got notes of like, well, do you want this to feel one way or the other? Should it be more dramatic? I was like, well, I think kids' fights are weird and goofy and dramatic all at once. So I guess to make the point of like, I think hopefully we can have everything together, and those things actually are really wonderful side by side often, right? Because of contrast.
Yeah. And Charlotte, you had the opposite issue where you had a very dark subject matter, and the animation adds lyricism to it, and it makes it more, what would be the right word? I don't know, palatable.
Yeah, approachable maybe. I think we had that was one of the challenges, because with first animation tests we did, the character design doesn't look like that way. They actually looked more cartoony, and talking with the animation, not the animation, sorry, the documentary producer were like looking at the animation test, was like, this design moving, they look too much like it's for a kids audience, and we need to be careful. We need to make the design look older. So we went to another direction, where more graphic novel kind of. So Miguel Sommer, with the character designer for the film, he does graphic novels. So we wanted to have something that is realistic. And also that will work with this limited animation that we have. So we really try to if you turn on the TV and you have the movie, how an adult will say, okay, I can watch that, when a kid will be like, that's not for me. So I think that was very important for us, and for the directors as well, because as I mentioned, he's not from animation, so he wanted something more, more graphic comic-like.
Great. So the last question for all five of you is, can you tell us a film, not yours or the colleague next to you, one animated film that we should all watch from the past year? So, yeah, a recent animated film that we should all be familiar with. Yes, go ahead, Charlotte.
The Summit of the God. It's a French 2D animation. It's an adaptation from a Japanese comic book. It's beautiful. It's on Netflix. Please watch it. It's
what's the name again?
The Summit of the Dog.
God.
Of the God, not the dog. Sorry. The Summit of the God. Sorry, my English is a little. But Summit
perfect.
of the God, and it's a beautiful 2D and drone animation. I don't know if you got the chance to watch it, but
I did, yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Enrico, do you have a?
She stole mine. No,
Same.
I did enjoy that.
Good sign.
I love climbing too. A different, what would be a great? I'm coming up short here. Like, I did really love Summit of the Gods as well. What else? I might have to go a couple of years back. I feel like this is a Wes Anderson movie that I think not many people have seen. I Love Dogs.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
or maybe you have seen it, but I feel like nobody it just went by the wayside for some reason, and I love that movie.
Yeah, that's terrific. Cherise, do you have?
I'm going to go with Vivo. I watched it with my daughter, and we both really loved it. Obviously, my boy Lin wrote the music for that one, but I found it really enchanting and fun and delightful.
That's great. Don?
Oh man, everybody's stealing mine. I know that's the trouble going last, or close to last. Ron's Gone Wrong, I thought was a sweet movie, and I think that would, if nobody's seen it, I think that'd be good to check out.
That's great.
This is sort of a cheat, but it's a series called Keep Your Hands Off Aizuken, which is about animation in like the most fun, nerdy way, but it's also this like real like celebration of creativity, and it like, they're describing like what they want the animation to look like, and it's like appearing in front of them. It's really wonderful and magical, and I think even if you don't care about animation, it will make you care about animation. But if you guys don't care about animation, you're out of luck. You just sat through 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you don't care about animation, I'm so sorry about what just happened.
Well, thank you all for being here. This is the first animation panel. Thank you. And thank you, guys.
Roger.
Thank you.